She never expected silence on her birthday. No streamers. No early morning knock at the door. Not even a note left on the kitchen table. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and an emptiness that filled the house. The kind of quiet that makes your chest feel too tight. The kind of quiet that doesn't just whisper he forgot, it screams it. And in that moment, standing there in her pajamas, she believed it. Before we unravel the mystery, if you love heartfelt stories with a twist, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Drop a comment below if you've ever had a birthday that didn't go as planned. Now, back to the story. She had always been close to her dad. The kind of bond that's built over burnt waffles, late-night movies, and shared inside jokes. He never missed a birthday. Not once. Which made this year hurt more than any forgotten gift ever could. She tried to tell herself he was just running late. Maybe there was a surprise coming. Maybe this silence was just a setup to something unforgettable. But as the hours passed, that hope faded. The house stayed quiet. Her phone stayed silent. And the pit in her stomach grew heavier with every glance at the clock. She wandered into the kitchen. No cake, no candles, just a flickering light above the stove. That's when she whispered it, out loud, even though no one was around to hear it. I think he forgot. But somewhere beneath her feet, something was stirring. A machine clicked to life in a hidden room. A recipe card fluttered in the breeze of a secret vent. And behind a locked door, vanilla and cinnamon danced in the air. He hadn't forgotten. Not even close. He was building something. Something sweet. Something secret. Something she'd remember for the rest of her life. And it was almost ready. She woke up earlier than usual. Part of her hoped maybe he'd be there. Sitting in the kitchen. Coffee in one hand. A birthday card in the other. Maybe the smell of pancakes would be drifting down the hallway. Or a silly note would be stuck to her bedroom door. But the only sound was silence. She padded down the stairs. No streamers. No decorations. No sign of a celebration. Just an untouched couch and an empty kitchen. His car was gone. Not a text. Not a call. Not even a scribbled sticky note saying he'd be back soon. She stood by the counter, staring at the fridge. Last year, it was covered in Polaroids and balloons taped to magnets. This year, just a grocery list and an old coupon for frozen lasagna. Something about that made her chest tighten. She poured herself cereal, the kind he always teased her about for being just sugar in a bowl. But she didn't smile this time. The spoon clinked against the bowl too loud in the quiet kitchen. Time moved slowly that morning, like the day was stretching itself just to hurt more. She kept checking her phone, refreshing, waiting, but nothing came. By noon, her best friend texted, "Happy birthday. What did your dad do this time? Surprise cake? Weird scavenger hunt?" She stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. She didn't know how to reply. At 1:17 p.m., she found herself standing at the window, just watching the street. Every time a car passed, she leaned forward. Every time it wasn't his, she leaned back. There was no music playing in the house. No baking sounds. No signs of anything being planned. Just a slow, growing ache that maybe this year he'd really forgotten, and still a part of her held on. Maybe it was stubbornness, or hope, or just the unwillingness to believe the man who once built a miniature Ferris wheel out of popsicle sticks for her 8th birthday could forget. But the hours kept slipping by, and she was starting to wonder, was this just going to be another day? It started with a flower, a light dusting, almost nothing, on the floor near the garage door, barely noticeable, but it hadn't been there that morning. She paused, crouching down, running her finger through it. Soft, fresh, definitely flower. And something else, a faint smell in the air. Warm, sweet, like vanilla had passed through the house and left a trace behind. She turned her head, eyes narrowing toward the garage. The door was shut. It was always shut, but something about it felt different now, like it was holding something back. Her dad was a careful man. He cleaned as he cooked. He never left messes. And he definitely didn't leave flower trails in the hallway. She reached for the handle. Locked. Not just closed, locked, and not with the usual twist lock either. There was a new latch, silver, heavy duty, recently installed. Her breath caught in her throat. Why would he lock the garage? She leaned in, pressing her ear gently to the door. At first, silence. Then a faint hum, a soft mechanical whir, like something spinning, a whine like metal stirring in rhythm. And just underneath it, a soft beep. She stepped back. This wasn't just a garage. Something was running behind that door, and it definitely wasn't a car engine. Later that day, she called her best friend. "I think something weird is going on," she whispered. "What do you mean weird?" "He forgot my birthday, but there's flour in the hallway, and something's running in the garage, but it's locked, and I don't know. It just feels wrong." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then a voice, half joking but curious. "You think your dad's secretly baking you a guilt cake?" She didn't laugh, because now she wasn't sure. Something about the garage felt too intentional, too quiet, too secret. She wandered back through the hallway, eyes tracing the ceiling. The smell was stronger now, definitely vanilla, and something else, maybe cinnamon? She looked down. Another small patch of flour near the baseboard, leading toward a shelf that had always just been there. She stared at it for a long moment. It was just a shelf, wasn't it? Or had it always stuck out from the wall just a little too far? She couldn't stop staring at the shelf. It looked normal, wooden, dusty, a few old books, a toolbox, a jar of coins, but something about it didn't sit right. She tilted her head. The shadows behind it didn't match the rest of the wall, like the light knew something she didn't. Slowly, cautiously, she reached out and gave a gentle push. Nothing. She tried again, this time shifting her weight. There was a soft click, a faint shift. The entire shelf moved, just a little, but enough. Her breath caught. She stepped back, heart racing. The shelf was a door, a hidden one. She pulled it open. Behind it, a narrow, dim hallway stretched forward, lined with soft, warm lights, barely brighter than candles. And at the end, another door, smaller, older, metal. This wasn't part of the house. At least, not any part she'd ever seen. She hesitated. Everything in her said, "You shouldn't be here." But something deeper, stronger, whispered, "Go." So she stepped inside. Each footstep echoed gently. The walls were lined with scribbled blueprints, little sketches, measurements, diagrams of machines she didn't recognize. She ran her hand along the wall. Dust clung to her fingertips. This place had been hidden for a long time. She reached the metal door. There was no handle, just a keypad. Her heart sank until she saw it taped beside the frame. A note in her dad's handwriting. It read, "If you're here, try your birthday." She stared at it. That date, the one he'd supposedly forgotten, the one that had hurt all day. She pressed the numbers. Click. The lock released. The door creaked open. And then her world shifted. Rows of ovens lined the walls. Mixers, cooling racks, jars of spices with hand-drawn labels. It looked like a bakery, but one built by an engineer with too much imagination. The ceiling twinkled with string lights. A mechanical arm spun a bowl of frosting at the back. Cupcake towers, layered cakes under glass domes. And at the center, one massive table, covered in blueprints, ingredients, and photos of her. Baby photos, birthday photos, photos of every cake her dad had ever made for her. She stepped forward, not breathing. It was beautiful, unreal, and completely hidden. All this time, he hadn't forgotten. He had been building something for her. Something secret, something from the heart. And she had just found it. She didn't know where to look first. The lab felt like a dream, like stepping into someone's heart and seeing it beat with purpose. But it was a screen in the corner that pulled her in, a small tablet blinking, waiting. She tapped it. The screen lit up, fuzzy at first, then steady. Her dad's face appeared. Tired eyes, flour on his cheek. That crooked smile she knew too well. He looked straight into the camera and spoke. "If you're watching this, then you found it. Good. I hoped you would." She stood frozen. "I know today felt empty, and I know it probably hurt, but I need you to know I didn't forget, not even for a second." He let out a breath. "This whole thing, this lab, it started a year ago, maybe longer." The video cut to footage, old, grainy, him sawing wood in the garage, blueprints spread out, test cakes collapsing, late nights, flower clouds, mixer malfunctions. Every birthday, I try something new, something bigger, but I always felt like I was running out of ideas. And you're growing up, so I wanted to build something that would last. Not just a cake, not just a surprise. The screen flashed to another clip, him burning a batch of cupcakes. He laughed in the recording. "Okay, so some experiments didn't exactly work out, but I kept going, because this was my secret mission, a gift you'd never expect, built from scratch, just for you." She blinked fast, holding back tears. "I know life's been loud lately. Work, school, schedules pulling us in different directions. But this lab, this was my way of saying, I see you, I love you, and I haven't stopped showing up, even if it's behind the scenes." The footage faded to a still frame, a close-up of her dad's hands, placing a small candle in the center of a cake. The video ended. Silence filled the room again, but it didn't feel empty this time. It felt full of every late-night hour he spent planning, every failed recipe he laughed through, every quiet choice he made to show her he cared. This wasn't just a surprise. It was a love letter, written in sugar and flour and time. The air in the lab was still. The screen had gone dark. Her father's voice silent now, but his presence lingered in every jar, every handwritten label, every smudge of flour on the counter. She looked around. Dozens of ingredients, rows of instructions, timers, tools, a whole system. He had mapped it all out. And at the very center of the table, a single recipe card, titled simply, "For her." She picked it up. The paper was worn, like it had been handled 100 times. There were notes in the margins, doodles, little hearts. She smiled. It wasn't just a recipe. It was a blueprint of care. Vanilla bean, almond extract, a pinch of cinnamon for warmth, he wrote. One line had been crossed out and rewritten 3 times. He was still tweaking it, even up to the end. She scanned the ingredients. Almost all there. Almost. One measurement was missing, just a blank space where the sugar amount should be. She stared at it, puzzled. Had he forgotten? No, that wasn't like him. He didn't forget details. Not when it came to this. She looked around the lab again. That's when she saw the note on the cupboard, written in his handwriting. "Trust your taste." Her heart skipped. It wasn't a mistake. It was a challenge. He wanted her to finish it, to make it hers. She took a breath. Then she got to work. Bowls clanged. Flour flew. Measuring cups clicked together. She spilled cinnamon. Twice. Nearly dropped the eggs. The mixer started spinning too fast and flung batter across the counter. She laughed. A real, shaky, surprise laugh. Because suddenly, it felt like he was right there beside her. Not directing. Not correcting. Just being there, helping her find the rhythm. She dipped a spoon into the batter. Tasted it. Too sweet. She adjusted. Again. Perfect. The oven ticked as it preheated. She poured the mix into the pan, smoothed the top, placed it on the center rack, and closed the door. Then came the waiting, the quiet hum of the lab, the smell slowly filling the room, a warmth she hadn't realized she needed. She sat down at the work table, arms folded, watching the timer count down. There was batter on her sleeve, flour in her hair, and she didn't care, because somehow, in trying to finish what he started, she had begun something of her own. The smell of warm cake filled the lab, golden edges, soft center, just the right hint of cinnamon. She had done it. Somehow, she had finished it. She stood by the oven, watching the cake rise behind the glass, her arms crossed, heart still steady from the rush of it all. But slowly, A different feeling began to settle in. A quiet question. The one she had pushed away while the batter spun, while the flour floated through the air like snow. Where was he? The cake was done. The lab was discovered. The surprise revealed. But he still wasn't home. She checked her phone again. Nothing. She opened the garage door. His car, still gone. The house was silent. Every corner. She walked back to the lab, eyes scanning again, this time not in awe, but in search of something else. A clue, a reason. And that's when she noticed the calendar on the wall, tucked beside a rack of spices, marked with handwritten notes and scribbles only he would understand. In today's square, one small note. Back by 5 p.m. Project, birthday. She looked at the clock. 5:17. Her throat tightened. It wasn't like him to be late. Not when he'd planned this much. Not after all of this. The smile she'd worn just minutes ago slipped. The lab, once glowing with magic, now felt still, like it was holding its breath. Maybe he got caught up in something. Traffic. A last errand. Maybe he was just on his way. But what if he wasn't? She sat on the stool near the counter, the finished cake cooling beside her, one candle in her hand, unlit. She rolled it between her fingers, staring at the lab door, waiting for it to open. She didn't cry. Not yet, but the quiet was louder now, and the questions were starting to echo. Where was he? Why wasn't he back yet? What if something had gone wrong? The cake was ready. The candles were waiting, and the one person she wanted to share it with still wasn't there. The candle was still in her hand. She hadn't lit it. It didn't feel right, not without him. The lab glowed softly around her. Machines still. Mixers silent. The cake sat cooling on the counter. Finished perfect, untouched. She watched the clock. Every tick a little heavier. And just as she reached to put the candle down, she heard it. A door creaked. Somewhere upstairs. Then the sound of shoes, wet ones, on the kitchen tile. Her breath caught. She stood slowly. Heart pounding now, not from fear, from hope. She ran up the hallway and turned the corner. There he was, standing in the doorway, soaked from the rain, hair dripping, jacket clinging to him, a brown paper bag in one hand, a small box in the other. He looked up and smiled, not a big smile, a tired, gentle, knowing one. Sorry I'm late, he said, out of breath. The bakery was out of almond paste. I had to find a backup. She didn't speak. She just stared, then walked straight into him. No words, just arms, tight around his waist, tighter than she meant to. He didn't flinch. He just held her. I didn't forget, he whispered into her hair. Not for a second. She pulled back, eyes misty. I know, she said. I found it. His brow furrowed for a second, then softened. You went in? She nodded. And you finished the cake? She smiled. You left a sugar blank. He chuckled, a little proud, a little sheepish. Yeah, I wanted you to make it your own. They walked back down together. The lab, still warm, welcomed them back in. He looked around, taking in the scene, the flour on the counter, the bowls in the sink, the cake, golden and tall, resting in the center. He blinked hard, like he couldn't believe it. She lit the candle. Just one. That's all it needed. They stood in silence for a second. Then he said, You ready? She nodded. Together, they leaned in, made a wish, and blew it out. No party, no balloons, no noise, just the smell of fresh cake and the quiet joy of being exactly where they were supposed to be. It wasn't the birthday she expected, but it was, without question, the sweetest one she ever had. The candle was out. Smoke curled gently into the air, but the moment it lingered. They didn't rush to cut the cake. They just sat at the work table, side by side, hands dusted in flour, hearts finally full. She looked around again. Now that he was here, the lab felt even more alive, brighter, like it had been waiting for both of them. He pulled a blanket from one of the shelves, folded just in case, draped it over her shoulders. You cold? He asked. No, she said softly. Just happy. He smiled at that. The kind of smile only a dad can give. The kind that says, "Me too." Then, without ceremony, he grabbed 2 forks. No plates, no candles, no big announcement. Just cake. Warm, sweet, perfectly imperfect. They dug in together. He took one bite and paused. "You added nutmeg?" She nodded, thought it needed a little something extra. He grinned. "You're not wrong." They kept eating, talking, laughing. Stories started spilling out about the time he tried to make a cake with root beer, about the mixer that exploded marshmallow cream all over the garage wall, about how he had no idea how to build this lab at first, but figured out one weekend at a time. She listened, eyes wide, not just at the stories, but at the love behind them. Then came the knock. She looked up, startled. Another knock, soft, fast, familiar. She ran upstairs and opened the door. Her best friend stood there, holding balloons, a tiny speaker, and a confused smile. "Your dad texted me, said you might need backup frosting?" She laughed. Let her in. Together, they lit another candle. Turned on music, nothing fancy, just a soft beat in the background. They danced a little, talked too loud, made a mess of sprinkles across the counter. And the lab, once hidden, was now full of light and sound and people. It wasn't a birthday party, not in the usual sense, but it was something better. Real, small, unforgettable. The kind of celebration you don't plan. You just grow into. Together, the cake was nearly gone. Crumbs on the counter, forks resting on empty plates. Laughter still echoing faintly down the hall. The lab had quieted again. But it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. This one felt warm, complete, like the closing of a book you never wanted to end. She looked around at the frosting-covered table, at her dad fixing a loose light bulb overhead, at her best friend humming to herself as she swept up sprinkles. And she realized something. This day hadn't gone wrong. It had gone differently, and somehow even better. There had been no big crowd. No expensive party, no over-the-top surprise, just time, effort, intention, love, the kind that takes its time and works in secret, the kind that doesn't show off. It just shows up, and maybe that's the real recipe. A dash of thoughtfulness, a spoonful of patience, a sprinkle of surprise, and a whole lot of heart. Because sometimes the best gifts aren't wrapped. They're built, baked, shared. And sometimes they're waiting behind a door you never even knew was there. If this story warmed your heart even a little, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. And tell us in the comments, what's the most meaningful surprise someone ever gave you? Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next story.